All right. So let's check in on the changes I have made here to share and share. When we first ran the rendition of this deck, it did kind of awful. And there was some expectation of its awfulness, to be quite honest. We were running the deck in a much more sloppy kind of figure things out way. Mechanically, I do like the moving blood around thing. That was a lot of fun. Never saw Kingston Penitentiary. Really didn't see any of our hunting grounds, which hurt a lot. The deck does really rely on that. Also went to Torpor a lot, even considering how much Martyr's Resilience we play and the Skin of Rocks. But here we've changed up a little bit. We're going to go a little bit of the Intercept route here, try something a little different. Going with some Major Boon as well. This could be useful to push bleeds around when we need to. I was also thinking about going with, what was it? It's not Minor Boon, right? Minor Boon is the Torpor one. Lesser Boon. So this is usable when one of your minions would block. You can basically put it on somebody and they can't block you anymore. It's a little hard to use though if your prey is a bleed deck. But if your prey is not a bleed deck, then you can use some Eagle Sights, which we're not running right now, but I was thinking about potentially running. And then trade it up with Lesser Boon each time you block to basically turn your prey's minions into minions that can't get in the way, and then periodically bleed out. But this less than 6 pool thing makes it hard for you to get the oust. You basically have to kill them from 6, which means we have to kind of turn into a bleed deck. Back into a bleed deck, I should say, because we have removed the bleed package. Not a very good strategy. I mean, because if you can't get a govern and conditioning off, then your entire tactic there is completely lost. It's an interesting concept. I've seen it done in reasonable ways. This is just not how I think it's going to work. But I really do like the card. I really do think that this is something that a number of combat decks could really greatly benefit from, or really a lot of, not combat, well, I guess combat as well, but mostly wall decks could benefit from, but very situational. I don't think that comparatively Minor Boon for combat decks is nearly as good, but that's a whole nother story. I think it has its uses, but I think it's far more situational. It also does not have the caveat that you can use on your own turn. So kind of irrelevant, though worth thinking about playing one copy of in this deck just because we might be able to save somebody else's vampire when we need it. Because a lot of this deck is trying to figure out when we can take advantage of other players' situations. What we switched up is we've brought in a much bigger defensive package. Burnt Offerings is a kind of interesting card I wanted to play around with, so we're going to take a chance to play with it. Kind of gives your Predator a thing to think about when they bleed you. You don't normally want to do damage to your Predator, but here I feel like there's room to make some exceptions. Here we could actually lock ourselves in a very interesting circumstance, one that I've wanted to do for a while, which is we get a Predator that's kind of in a weakened state, kind of worn down. They try to bleed us out, and we life boon our own Predator back into the game. Essentially guaranteeing us the minimum of 1 VP at the table, which on a lot of tables can actually be a game win all by itself. If you're close enough to the time limit or you see the game stalling out, you can literally use this to life boon somebody back in, put yourself down to 1, and take yourself out the next turn. And if you see that as being the most victory points you can do, that's what you do. You can... we also have a few enhanced senses, a lot of Eyes of Argus for the Wake, and it is potential intercept during a block. Kindred Coercion is still in here from before, and My Enemy's Enemy, because this over Telepathic Misdirection, I think, is more useful mostly because of the cost. I don't like that it costs 1. I don't like that to use it as the intercept side, and I don't really care about moving the bleed forward. The problem I tend to find with moving the bleed forward is either way you're going to have a sort of predator on prey scenario. However, when you my enemy's enemy, you get something different. You instead get a bleed on somebody who wants to deal with the person who's now bleeding them. This can be a very good cross-table communication card. I don't want this bleed. Can you handle this bleed? Yes. Here. Or, I don't want this bleed. Can you handle this bleed? No. Then I'll take it for you. A little bit of assurance, a little bit of benefit to you in the shorter term, maybe even in the longer term. But I think it's a interesting interaction, and one that is less relevant in the I'm going to bounce it forward 1 space scenario. So we're trying out my enemy's enemy because situationally, in the way this deck plays, I think it's better. We're also running some concealed weapons now and nightsticks. This is coming off the back of my Jake from State Farm deck. I really think Forearm Block did a better job than I expected, and I think that Nightstick might be able to do the same. Now, I know and recognize it does not prevent non-weapon, non-hand strikes. I know. But it does stop a lot of ag packages, which are largely Protean ag packages or vicissitude ag packages, and their hand strikes. So you got that. It can stop pretty sizable punches. This is basically ending blocking a slam. Even it can't get through a grapple, but it could block a slam if without a grapple, or if we've got a charismatic aura in hand. We have 2 vampires that can play charismatic aura. One can even play it at superior. So there's really not a reason not to be running this for the, happenstance times that it's going to get us out of a grapple. In the same token, we're also trying out Bliss here to cancel a Frenzy card. We're going to be playing weapons. The last thing we want to do is lose the ability to play weapons on a random off chance. So we'll play 1 copy of Bliss and see if it comes up at just the right time. And again, we have a situation where it could even be played at superior. Probably not, but could be in a pinch. Still didn't really get to see much of Denial of Aphrodite's Favor. In fact, misplayed and missed an interaction of this. Other than that, deck hasn't changed a lot. Playing 1 less Govern the Unaligned, a lot less bleed cards, no more seductions. We are still playing Command, just because I think there might be the one-off instance this might be good. But we're not really going to be acting a lot. Govern is going to be our only real action, and that's really just going to be to start us off. Once we get later in the game, maybe we Govern Bleed in the right circumstances, but I think most of the time the strategy is not going to be to win this way. Well, then you've got to be asking, well, Steven, how the fuck do you win? Yeah, I haven't figured that out either. Really having a bit of a problem there with that. One thought is we try to do a quasi-Kingmaker strategy where we sort of forcibly use our Predator's Predator with the My Enemy's Enemy strategy and the Major Boon strategy to put our Predator in a situation, or Predator's Predator in a situation where we can life boon them and give them an opportunity to kill their own Predator. Gonna be a weird thing though, because you've got to really work that out socially, get them to realize, hey, they're potentially trading a VP for a VP. And then you try to continue to do that strategy a little bit. We have to see first if that strategy even works. So again, trying the My Enemy's Enemy thing. Honestly, it's likely not going to work, but this is something I've been wanting to play around with for a while. So we're going to give it a try next time we play. I've also started running a copy of Power Base Chicago. This card is kind of bad by itself, but it's another bargaining tool. Each turn, you just put a blood on it, or you can take all the blood off of it. Or someone can come steal the blood off this card. Now that's pretty small. 1 pool might not be enough for somebody to steal, but an average of 2 pool turn, we know people are willing to pay for that. We know people are willing to trade for that. And so if we can get a Church of the Order of St. Blaise in play this gives us potentially 2 pool to have sitting on a power base Chicago to do some negotiations with. And again, that's going to be a big part of this deck, is trying to work out situations and negotiations that can present us with a position where we'll get the ability to life boon somebody. It's a really weird gimmick. I know. Survive for a while, try to keep the table going, and then squeak out a little life boon VP. But to be honest, doesn't that just make it a challenge? And isn't it worth really pushing yourself to the limit? Probably not, but I want to anyway. I think the deck has a lot of things here that are uniquely set up so I can test them. I think that's a really big part of it. This is a unique opportunity to test something in a way that I think the deck can survive. I think between the small combat package that we have, I guess modest combat package that we have, it is 26 cards in combat. The modest defensive package we have, including these and the radios, we should have a pretty interesting experiment to behold, and get a lot of ideas for what parts of this will work and what parts of it won't. And it may lead us in the next direction for the next iteration of this deck. Otherwise, if you guys have any feedback on this deck or any suggestions, feel free to toss that info in the comments. But I'm not going to press you for it because that's not my jam. Anyway, catch you guys later.